So I'm going to start by introducing Lionel. So Lionel Hill, he's a PE, he's got a CEM, and he is the chief of the Energy Market Solutions, and Special Projects for the state of Maryland, Department of General Services. He's overseen various forward-looking energy-related initiatives at the state and has played key roles in managing Maryland's performance contracting program since 1998. The program responsibilities have included oversight of ESCO's selection, project management, M&V, and he's been involved in, is it 24 projects? Is that right? I guessed it was 30.
Yeah, so roughly, yes. Mm-hmm.
About 24. Okay, prior to coming to the state, he worked for many years at an electric and gas utility. He also held an engineering positions in the ESCO sector. So he did M&V for an ESCO for several years. So he knows what we do. That's why he was actually a great pick for his job, because he did what we did first, and then they wanted someone who did what we did, who could oversee the ESCO work. It was very smart of them to pick someone like him. Okay, he's got a background in building systems design and energy engineering. He's got a BS in aerospace from North Carolina State. That's it. So Lionel, let's talk. What do you got?
Okay, thank you, John. Today I just wanted to, I really just wanted this to be a session in which I shared a series of stories with the group. I think a lot of the stories many of you will actually find familiar. So the format that I'd like to follow is I'd like to start by telling a story, and then at the end I would like to state then the lessons that we learned as a result of that experience. I hope to get through at least 3, possibly 4 actual examples in the time remaining. And then if we do have any time left over after that, I would like to offer some of my overall observations of the ESCO and EPC sector based upon now nearly 30 years of being involved in the industry. So before we get started with our specific project stories, I just wanted to give a brief overview of the Maryland Energy Performance Contracting Program. I think it's probably one of the older state programs in the country. Maryland passed its first enabling legislation to do EPCs in 1994. That legislation has been amended a few times since then. Under that legislation, we have done approximately 30 projects to date. We have about 15 active projects, that is, projects that are still in the performance period. And in Maryland, most of our performance period results are required to be demonstrated through either option C or some rigorous application of option B. I mean, not all, not 100%, but we do rely heavily on option C. And we are a big user of the metrics software. So that's, you know, didn't mean to, but there's a project endorsement for Abraxas. We have, you know, we've done many projects using that software. As I say, we also do several projects with ongoing option B as well. To date, we've registered about, and again, these numbers are all approximate, but over the since 1994 or so, we have registered about $265 million in capital improvements through EPCs. And those improvements were were covered by approximately $56 million in guaranteed energy and operational savings. And we've actually achieved actual savings to the tune of about $67 million. Now, hopefully, before we close, I will offer my remarks on that $11,000 or $12,000 delta. It sounds great on the face of it. There's another side to it. Hopefully, we'll have time to get to that. I do also want to mention that our office, in addition to overseeing our energy performance contracting program, we also oversee various other major energy initiatives. For example, our office oversees the purchase of deregulated natural gas and electricity for all state agencies. And last year, our total utility purchases, now this includes more than gas and electricity, but most of this figure is included in those two commodities. That came to almost $174 million a year. We actually track all of our utility records through a comprehensive statewide energy database, which our office manages. I believe you'll find that Maryland is the only state in the country that does this on such a comprehensive level. It's actually through our database that we are actually able to then support all of our other energy initiatives, such as our energy performance contracting program. I mean, a big part of doing any EPC is actually establishing a baseline and then following the utility expenditures on the back end, and we are able to do that through our comprehensive utility database. So I could probably spend an entire hour talking about each of those initiatives, but I really at this point want to move on to the topic at hand, which are lessons learned from years of experience in the EPC program. And again, as John mentioned in his introduction, I come at this with a background in measurement and verification. I worked for a major ESCO back in the mid to late 90s, where I actually was introduced to energy performance contracting and worked as a number of years there as an M&V specialist, and then actually was brought to the state to actually oversee measurement and verification for what was then the state's rather embryonic EPC program. And during my time with the state, I have actually not only overseen the M&V for specific projects, and that includes working with the ESCOs during the development phase to actually put together a comprehensive M&V plan, but and also then on the back end reviewing the actual annual results. But one of the things that I did shortly after starting with the state of Maryland was I actually drafted a comprehensive set of M&V specifications, which forms part of the master contract that Maryland uses when it selects ESCOs and when we actually perform specific projects. So we actually do have a set of specific standards that that we require all of our contractors to follow. And that has proved invaluable in avoiding, these inevitable disputes that will arise down the road if you don't have such a set of standards in place. I want to talk again about some specific project experiences that we've had and what we learned from that, and so that when we move forward, we try to take advantage of the experiences that we had before, and so we've had a number of those. The first I would like to mention, and I'm going to do this by describing either a project or in some cases several projects that we've done. I am not going to be specific about the name of the project, the agency, or the ESCO. That's really not necessary. I mean, the lesson is the lesson, no matter what else. The first that I will describe actually is a compilation of 3 projects. And we kind of had the same experience on all 3 projects. And it involved projects that where there was a central plant, a central steam plant, in fact. And in a couple of cases, the ESCOs had proposed decentralizing the steam plant. So we were going from a central steam plant to placing heating equipment in each individual building, okay? And then the other project also involved a central steam plant. It did not involve decentralization, but one thing that all 3 projects had in common was that the existing systems, the baseline systems, were characterized by extensive steam leaks in the underground steam supply and condensate piping. So we were losing a lot of steam, and so we were expending a lot of money making up for that lost steam as a result of leaks. So various solutions were put forward, but the bottom line on each of these projects was that we found out after the fact that the ESCOs had grossly underestimated the savings potential.
Really? You would have thought it'd be the other way around. Huh, that's amazing.
Well, yeah, again, these are special cases. Yeah, that's why I started with this one. These are actually special cases. I mean, we found out, and the way we found out, of course, is that when we began the actual performance phase monitoring, we were getting reports every year showing extremely high excess savings levels. I mean, to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars in quote, excess savings. Okay. Well, what that means is that we could have, or the ESCO could have claimed some of those savings had they not been so risk averse. And we could have actually done a much larger project, which would have benefited the ESCO, and it would also have benefited the state because we always end up having more needs than we're able to accommodate through an EPC project. So the more we can do with the actual available savings, the better. In Maryland, unfortunately, we are not allowed by state law to carry over any excess savings from one year to the next. I know some states are allowed to do that. We are not allowed to do that. So each of our performance years must just stand on their own. And so if we have one year where we have huge excess savings, we can't carry that forward. Or if we have a year in which we are at a deficit, we can't make that up in a future year. So
Right.
having these huge excess savings doesn't help us. But here's the thing. If the ESCO had just done some basic, very preliminary measurements during the project development phase, it would have easily come to light to them that the available savings were much greater. I can remember having a discussion with one of the engineers, on one of our projects, and I was kind of cajoling him. I was saying, guys left so much money on the table. You could have, you could have done a much bigger project. And he confided in him. He said, look, the development team went to management, and we tried to sell management on a higher savings level, but management wouldn't go for it. They were just so risk averse.
Sure.
And what I'm proposing is that that ESCOs, the ESCOs in particular, and not just the ESCOs, but the owner themselves, be much more upfront. Willing to invest in upfront measurements, even if they are just spot measurements. They don't have to be, they don't have to be lengthy, in-depth measurements, but even just spot measurements to capture the actual baseline of the project. You may find that the actual baseline is even higher than the assumed baseline, or you may actually find that it's lower, and that will also avoid a lot of discussion later on when the savings then aren't the savings are not being met, apparently are not being met, and that could actually be because the ESCO overstated the baseline. That could be for any number of reasons, but actual measurements up front would certainly help to clarify the baseline and what savings are actually reasonable in the beginning. And again, that it might end up turning into a even larger project.
So Lionel, these guys didn't, the engineers didn't measure, or they just guessed on the amount of steam losses that you had initially?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'll just give an example. Had someone had the foresight to just put a meter on the boiler feed water, the boiler feed water line, for example, they would have easily that there was excessive feed water being used, and you could have discerned from that hey,
that's right.
This is the magnitude of the leaks. We should only be using this much feed water for this size system. We're using this much, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. Yeah.
All right. Now, that's good. You got another point? More story?
Yeah. Another story. Next story. And the next story is really, and you're going to find, by the way, that I'm going to sound like a broken record here today because, I'm an M&V person who places a very heavy emphasis on the measurement part of measurement and verification. So, most of my stories are going to, in some way or another, have that common theme, like the next story. Okay. Now, this is a story where this was a project that's done a number of years ago. It was a 40 to 50 year old steam plant at a state facility. So the ESCO came in, and the ESCO recommended retiring that existing plant and putting in a new plant. Okay. And then the question arose, well, what size capacity boilers do we need? Okay. The original system was clearly oversized. Central plants tend to be, and of course, there's probably good reason for that. But again, under an EPC, now sizing becomes a much more critical consideration because you only have a certain pot of capital to work with. And so you don't want to just unnecessarily tie up capital by gratuitously oversizing certain equipment, and then that leaves less capital, less available for other measures.
They're also probably scared about if they undersize it, maybe they would right size it, but then you go and you expand, the steam using equipment, and now the plant can't meet the new load, and then there might be lawsuits or arguments or something about that. I can see why NESCO is reluctant.
Well, no, the whole issue of proper sizing, as you point out, John, is it is a detailed discussion. It goes beyond simply what is the load on the system today, agreed. But in this case, they actually, they were basing their decision on just what they thought the current load was. I'll explain, okay? They hired a consulting engineer, mechanical engineer, to do load calculations on the facility, okay? Now, but bear in mind, we're in late fall at this point. So we're getting close to the start of heating season. And the ESCO was just in the very beginning of the development phase. So we were getting close to the beginning of heating season. The engineer came back and provided a calculation using the standard ASHRAE algorithms, okay? The engineer came back and reported you need 200 horsepower boiler capacity to meet the maximum load on this facility. The nature of this facility was that it was a critical facility, and so it actually required by code that there be 100% redundancy. So 200 horsepower really meant 400 horsepower installed capacity, okay? We recommended that since we were actually coming into the heating season, why not? And we had some time because the ESCO was really just getting started in their detailed energy audit phase. We said, why not put some instrumentation in and let's trend the actual load on the system. And that way we will know. I mean, it's just kind of, if you want to know what a bag of potatoes weigh, you don't go look up in a table and it says, well, the average potato weighs blank within this range. So, no, you just throw the bag of potatoes on a scale and you weigh it. So it's kind of that kind of analogy. So we actually had to kind of fight with the ESCO to get them to do it. They were proposing installing steam meters, which of course, as anybody who's had any experience with steam meters know, they are very expensive and they tend not to be that accurate. So we said, no, we don't need a steam meter. Just applying the basic principles of thermodynamics that every mechanical engineer learns in college, you can, through measuring key parameters such as liquid flow rates, pressures, and temperatures throughout the system, you can discern the steam load on the system. And so we convinced the ESCO to do that. They hired a subcontractor to come in and install some flow meters and in some cases, the existing points were already there. Some of the existing temperature points and pressure points were already there, so there was no additional cost required. And we ended up collecting data from roughly mid-January through early March. So we got
Good.
most of the critical portion of the heating season. And during that period of time, we did experience some very, very low temperatures down into the teens. So we were pretty close to design conditions. Well, the upshot of it is that the data came back, and the maximum load that we ever measured on the system in one 30-minute period during the entire time we monitored was 115 horsepower.
Wow.
Remember, the engineer's calculation had come back at 200 horsepower.
Right.
So we measured 115 horsepower, and in fact, that 115 was a bit overstated because that was really just one 30-minute peak. The average peak load that we measured was about 95 horsepower. So about half of what the engineer calculated. Now, it doesn't say that the engineer calculated wrong. The engineer followed the standard design calculation algorithms. As anyone knows who has worked with those algorithms, they are inherently conservative. If you follow them I used to do design. I used to sit and I used to, and this is in the old days before computers, so you had to do everything by hand. And I mean, you pour through the ASHRAE handbook of fundamentals, and you look down into the footnotes, and you made all of the adjustments, which often isn't done. But even if you follow that process to a T, you find out that you tend to end up installing far more capacity than is really needed. That's just inherent in the algorithms themselves. It doesn't speak in any way to the competence of the engineer. But again, this is an energy performance contract, so why should we tie up 400 horsepower of boiler capacity when we get away with possibly half of that? And even then, if you make allowances for pickup load or future expansion, maybe you're still looking at only maybe 300 horsepower. That, whatever that, and by the way, that additional boiler capacity also will translate into larger pipe sizes, because your piping mains have to be sized for the maximum of your central plant capacity. Those pipes have to be insulated. A larger pipe requires more square feet of insulation. It requires bigger valves, bigger strainers, possibly even more robust piping supports. The point is, the entire capital cost of the installation goes up because your primary equipment was oversized. And then, of course, that ties up capital that can't be used for other aspects of the project. So again, the lesson that we learned here was that whenever possible, get in and do actual measurements ahead of time. Either require the ESCO to do it, or be proactive and get in ahead of time yourself and do it. And then you have an accurate baseline case upon which then to base a new equipment selection decisions. We are actually in a process right now. We're looking at a facility now. We haven't decided if we're really going to proceed with an EPC, but we might. And this is another facility with a central plant, and we are currently we're trending the fuel usage. I mean, this is interval data, ongoing interval data. We're trending the fuel usage, and we're trending the steam output. from the plan, so that if we do get to the point of inviting ESCOs in, we will have actual measured information that we can hand to all of them and say, here, use this as a basis for your proposal.
That's good. That's good. How about number 3?
Number 3, real quick, and this is this is one that's on. I've talked about the ESCOs enough, but this is one that actually is on the owner side. In this case, we own this one. Okay, we had a project where we were, and every year we would go to the annual reconciliation meeting with the ESCO, and the ESCO was reporting all of these huge savings, and we would sit there, and the maintenance staff would sit there, and we were just so happy. Boy, this is a star, and we were actually advertising this as a star project. This is how an EPC should work. This is what you can do with an EPC. Well, lo and behold, that project finished. Okay, and then the agency decided, well, we'd like to do a follow-on project. We'd like to do another project. We had such good results, with the first project. Now we know it might not be the opportunities might not be as great, but it's been a while, so let's do another project. So we brought in another ESCO at that point, and the ESCO came back and they found out, they said, you know what? All of the outside air dampers in the mechanical room are shut. And so it turns out that one of the reasons we've seen so many apparent great savings is that the outside air dampers were shut, and the on-site maintenance folks never caught it. They never they never flagged it. They never brought it to the ESCO's attention. Now you can argue that, well, it was the ESCO's responsibility, but this was a fully staffed facility. So again, the lessons learned here is that you have to have owner involvement and engagement. You can't just turn it over to the ESCO and walk away. In this case, the ESCO was doing something that actually made the savings levels appear to be greater than what they really should have been.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the other way.
I'm surprised people didn't complain, the occupants, because they're being starved.
Well, we were scratching our heads, believe me. And again, I don't know, maybe the nature of this particular facility was such that they didn't, and it was, I'll have to tell you, I still have egg on my face from that experience. I'm really embarrassed by it, because I kind of felt like I was misled too. We manage projects for a number of different agencies. We're not on-site maintenance people. So, we just, right. We'll oversee the measurement and verification. We'll maybe go there if there's an issue, and we'll show up for an annual reconciliation meeting, but we're not there day to day. So, we're not in a position to know the details of the operation of the facility. But that one still, I still
funny
over that one. So those actually, John, conclude my example. There's actually one more that I will mention. It's very, very briefly. Another project that we did. This project involved multiple facilities. This particular agency had approximately 30 sites. Maybe not 30, but it was at least 24 sites that were all covered under a single EPC. We required the bulk of the savings under this project to be demonstrated through option C. And then some of the other savings and some of the facilities, for example, we just did, for example, lighting retrofits, or maybe we did some minor controls work or did some water conservation. And in those cases, we accepted those savings based on options A and B. But the bulk of the savings for the project, we required to be demonstrated through option C. As a result of that, we uncovered significant shortfall on the part of the ESCO. And it actually took several years to get all of this negotiated and straightened out, but we ended up receiving a shortfall check from the ESCO in excess of $1 million. Now, again, this covered several performance periods because it just took that long to get everything worked out. But the point is, had we not required option C, there is no way we would ever have gotten the ESCO to own up to that, that shortfall level, and we would probably still be bickering with them today over, whether or not there was even a shortfall at all, or if so, what it was, the level of it. The other thing that this pointed out, and the ESCO has acknowledged it, is that the project for the remainder of the performance period is likely to also be in a shortfall situation. So they've acknowledged that now, but again, I just want to point out that it's because we required option C that we were able to demonstrate that shortfall. We know the ESCOs don't like option C. We understand that clearly. They have an official policy really against it, unless the client just persists as we do. But in our case, that was a valuable lesson learned that we'd like to pass along. So,
can I ask you a series of questions?
Sure.
So have you ever been livid, like really angry? Did ESCO ever really make you mad?
That's a loaded question, John.
That might be enough. If you don't want to go any further on that, that's okay. Okay, so that sounds like you don't want to talk about any specific. Do you? How often does that happen that you get really angry at an ESCO? So you've been doing this, what, 20 years or so? How long have you been?
Yeah, 20 years? For the state, I've been doing it since 1998. Yeah.
So it's 24 years. So how many times do you think you've been really mad?
Several.
I mean, 6 or 24?
No, I mean several times. I mean that could be for any number of reasons, but often, frankly, it has to do with the ESCO's inability to keep to a schedule.
Oh.
They'll say it's going to be finished on this date or this date, and see the way it works again, state of Maryland, we finance our projects now through we finance it by through an escrow financing mechanism, where at the beginning of the actual construction phase, we actually we take out a loan, and that money is placed in escrow, and we make periodic progress payments to the ESCO throughout the construction period. But there is a date certain when those repayments must begin, and that date is actually set by the financing institution, and it's a hard date. And so when the ESCO runs, when they run very, very late, you've got a situation where the agency is having to make loan repayments, but yet the measures are not fully in place to generate the savings to cover those payments, which really violates the both the letter and the spirit of the performance contracting program. So there's that. We've also had to terminate ESCOs on a number of occasions because we select them based upon a proposal. Now, again, the way the selection process in Maryland works is it's a two-step process. ESCOs are, first of all, pre-qualified. They are pre-qualified to be on our list to be able to compete for projects. But then when a specific project opportunity arises, all of the pre-qualified ESCOs are invited to submit a competitive proposal. And the ground rules are that if you are selected as an ESCO to move forward with this project, you must then, at the end of the what we call phase 1 in Maryland and everywhere else is called the investment grade audit phase. At the end of that phase, you must come back with a project that at least meets or exceeds
your original bid. Right.
Otherwise, it's not fair to the other companies, and it makes a mockery out of the program, and it simply opens up the door for people to game the system by claiming that they're going to do all these great things for you and then reneging on them. So we've actually had to terminate several, because we got to that point and they weren't able to deliver. That really makes you mad, because now you have to start all over and you've lost all of this time. So, and I should say, in Maryland, again, the way our program works is when we invite the ESCOs in at the beginning of that secondary competitive phase of the process, we actually furnish them with far more information than they get from anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Give them, for example, we will furnish them with a detailed 24-month utility baseline, which we actually prepare internally. And again, because we track all of our utility expenditures, we have access to all of our bills, we know our utility rates, and so we put that together for all of them. We give them that. They don't have to go to the trouble of figuring that out for themselves. We also will typically give them a complete set of construction drawings. I mean, that's best we have for a facility. We allow them multiple walkthroughs before they even submit a preliminary proposal. So we give them all of this, and so we expect that in doing that, they should be able to give us a proposal that is a minimum, basically a minimum proposal that they can meet or exceed going forward.
Have you ever canceled a contract because the M&V people, let's say, didn't perform, or you didn't like how they did their job?
No.
You ever just canceled the guarantee?
No, we've been in situations, where we've had issues like that, but at that point, you're already into the performance period, and even though, and this is a tricky one, we still haven't resolved the best way, to handle these kinds of situations. There is, the ESCO is required to put up a form of surety. Often it's an energy savings bond. Sometimes it's a letter of credit or a parental guarantee on an annual basis, and we do legally have the right to to file a claim against that surety. But when you get right down to it, is that really practical? Or if you cancel the ESCO, which we actually could do, there is a severability there's a severability clause that allows us to cancel the project and
But you've not done it though. You've
we've
never.
not done it. We've not done it again, because when you get right down to it, the practical, they're practical.
Got it.
We've been close though. We've actually been close. So
I got another question. I think there, or at least I heard, I don't know if it's true, but I think it is, that there's these ambulance chaser type lawyers that are going around hunting for disgruntled performance contracting clients. Have you ever been approached by a lawyer or a legal group saying, you know, hey, you want to sue? We can get you some money. You ever heard? You ever been approached by that?
No, I don't know. Not to my, I don't know. We haven't. And again, perhaps because in our case, we are already, we're already deeply involved in all of our projects from start to finish. So there's not going to be a project out there that, if there's an issue, we already know about it, and we're already taking steps to.
No, not that you would do it, but that there's just these people looking for. They're looking.
Yeah,
looking
we have
for
not.
money.
No, we have not. No.
Have you ever had, oh yeah, here's the question. How can an M&V person, or what kind of advice would you give to M&V people to, let's say, stay on the good side of their client, or what kind of mistakes should they avoid? I guess that's a better question. What have you seen M&V people do that you don't want to ever see them do again?
Well, again, this is one that if you ask me this maybe a year or two from now, I could give you a better answer. The reason I say that, John, we just recently contracted with a third-party M&V firm to assist us with our M&V activities, and up until this point, we've always managed all of our M&V activities in-house. So, we have not had direct experience yet with a third-party firm, and I take that to really be the tenor of your question. But I would say generally, you would want a firm that actually takes that is truly on the owner side, and not someone who has been influenced by the prevailing views within the ESCO community. This is a very small, tight-knit field when you get right down to it. So what are the chances that somebody is going to be, they're operating as an independent M&V consultant, but they have no connection whatsoever with the ESCO?
Right.
Did they work for an ESCO previously? Do they kind of have in their mind, do they kind of harbor the kind of biases that
That's right.
ESCOs harbor? Yeah.
That's right. Some people are angry at ESCOs. They used to work there, and now they hate them, and they want revenge. People like them and maybe want to get a job with them later. So
still, yet they come but with the same kind of biases in the ESCO community. For example, I can tell you there are a lot of M&V folks that work for ESCOs now that they may talk the language of option C, but they have no idea what option C is or how to apply option C, because they've never had to do it, because their company policy is we do not do option C, and we talk our clients out of requiring option C.
I know.
Yeah.
It's a risk thing. I mean, everybody on the call knows why too. So here's a question for one of the listeners. What happens when the loan has to be paid, but the ECM hasn't been fully installed yet? What's the consequence?
We have, and again, that is, we've had that happen. And in fact, most recently, a project where I believe the ESCO must have finished over a year late. It may have been a year and a half late. And we faced that very situation. Now, we tried to handle it in a couple of different ways. in the past, but what we've settled on presently is for any new project that we do, there's a provision, and it's actually in our new master contract language. The ESCO is liable for liquidated damages. I've forgotten the exact amount, but it's a substantial amount, a per diem amount. So every day late that they finish beyond their scheduled completion date, they owe us that money, and that money then would go to the agency to support any loan payments that the agency would make when the ECMs had not been fully installed.
That's good. That's good. Let's see, I got another question. So I guess there's a trend to compress the project development cycle, to spend less and less time on putting together the IGA and putting the project together. And as a result, there's a lack of rigor and less measurements, and people don't understand the risk. Do you have any experience with that? That's what one of the people asked, and they wanted to know what you thought about that.
I mean, I know there's pressure for the ESCOs themselves. I know their development teams are under considerable pressure from their management to contract the development process. Quite honestly, we officially allow 6 months, but in practice, we often go way beyond 6 months. And again, it just, once you get into it, I think our thinking is we'd rather take a little more time and be more certain than to rush it, and then to have oversights in the in the scope development. So frankly, I kind of hate to put it this way, but if you're going to do a project with the state of Maryland, you're probably going to have to check a lot of your standard business model practices at the door, because we're going to do it our way. If you want to do business with us, you're going to have to do it our way. And so, I mean, yeah, I know we would love to be able to get in and out in, say, 4 months. That's just often not possible. For example, you do a project with multiple locations. We're actually considering doing a project with an agency now that has multiple locations around the state. So that's going to take time right there. You got to visit all of these locations multiple times. It's kind of hard to contract that process. Or you do a project in a facility like a correctional facility, for example, where access and security, very, very tight. And so, and maybe you can only have so many people on site at one time, that kind of thing. So, it is what it is. I mean,
I got one more.
We'd love to shorten the process, but I guess I will say this, John, in the answer to that question. One of the ways to shorten the process and to ensure the validity of the proposed solutions is to be prepared to come in on day one with instruments in hand.
Right.
And ready to slap those instruments on and start collecting data. We had a project a while back where there's our what we call phase one, the in-depth development phase. It started in like March of one year, okay? And now this was in a facility that was, the nature of the facility was that it was destined to drag out that process. So we were into the next calendar year, and now the ESCO has decided that they're going to come finally and start putting putting meters on equipment to start measuring equipment, and I was slapping my head. What? Yeah, so be proactive. If you want to shorten the process, then you need to be prepared to get in right away, and start again. We're going to already, if you're working with us, you're going to already have in your possession a treasure trove of information. We will have already given you a complete set of construction drawings, perhaps even control schematics. We've even gone so far on one project, we even gave the ESCO soil samples. So, I mean, it's like whatever we have, we're willing to share with you if you know what to do with it.
Yeah,
but
right.
you gotta be ready to go, ready to go from day one. And just understand that if you do a project with us, we're going to require probably a different level of rigor than what you're typically used to provide, and quite frankly.
Okay, we got to stop, Lionel. I really appreciate you coming on. This was really good. I learned some things that I didn't know before. I'm sure that the folks did as well. I really appreciate you coming on.